Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome to the sustainability webinars. This is the last webinar of our series. And it's again a pleasure to see so many people. I saw people from South Africa, from United States, from Portugal. So it's a pleasure. For the one that have been there previously, you know more or less what to expect. For the new ones, we'll give you a quick recap of, first of all, I'm Arthur. I'm a business analyst at Brightwolves, and I will be the technical support in this webinar. And this webinar, we have seen the two previous webinars. Miguel giving us an introduction to the oil and the climate and energy crisis, and how your business can become less dependent on oil and future-proof for those crises. Then the second webinar was with Olivier, who gave us a great idea on the energy consumption of IT services and their impact on the environment. He gave us very practical solutions to diminish it as a consumer, so that we have an impact as a consumer when you consume IT, but also as a business. I encourage you to go see his profile on LinkedIn or check Green IT web page to have more insights. And today, last but not least, we have a session about the circular economy in practice for businesses with our guest speaker, Pascal Durdu, who is administrator at UZ2. He is also active in the agroecological transition, and he recently created an association which is called Farming for Climate. I'm sure he will tell you better than me about it. A few rules very fast about this webinar before we get into the subject. So it will be a more or less 1 hour webinar with 40 to 45 minutes presentation and 15 to 20 minutes Q&A. If you have a question, please leave it in the Q&A section in Zoom that is on the ribbon below. Leave your question there so we can see it while we're doing the presentation and at the end, and other attendees will be able to upvote it or comment on the question. Because otherwise in the chat it goes very fast and the question might be overlooked. And I hope you understand that all attendees are muted for everyone's experience. And if you have any technical issues, just message me in the chat. You can message a message to myself, Arthur, and I will try to help you and make your experience as best as possible. A few words about Brightwolves before we start. So we're a management consulting company. We aim to bridge the gap between strategy and implementation, and we do so in the 4 pillars you see in front of you in strategy and finance, organization and operation, digital transformation, and data-driven solution. Lately, we focused on a new kind of transformation, the sustainable business transformation. What it is that we believe business now have the goal to create more value than just economical value, but also environmental value and engagement value. And through this transformation, we want to create value in those 3 areas that we call sustainable value. And this is why we do those sustainability webinars, to raise awareness and actually share knowledge and insights. So now I will leave the floor to Olivier, who will tell us about the circular economy in practice for businesses. Enjoy, guys.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Is it okay technically? Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start. So I will talk during 40 minutes about circular economy, and what I would like you to take out of this webinar and presentation is that circular economy is about your ecosystem and your environment. That's something that's not happening alone. This is really a group of companies, organizations that can make it happen. It's also something that requires a lot of intelligence, and there is, I would say, no boundaries and no limits. I would take one example. You can, for example, recycle glass. But at the end, to do the recycling process work, you need energy, and you can also do something on the energy. So we talk about not a chain, but a big network of opportunities, and this needs to be done with your ecosystem. So knowing your ecosystem and your environment are really key elements into applying circular economy. So we'll go through a kind of story where we'll introduce to some definition and key concepts. We'll approach 5 business models. Those 5 business models is more something rhetoric, but it's not limiting opportunities around circular economy, and even I would say every example that I will go through afterwards are covering not only one business model, but could play a game into multiple business models. And then at the end, we'll talk about some drivers and conclusion. As a quick introduction, so you all know about all those crises: climate crisis, biodiversity, resource, soil fertility, pollution, and so on. So the target is, let's say the planet is finite in a way. So we have to organize properly our resources. And circular economy is putting a big emphasis on the resources and the proper use of resources. And it's also a way to sometimes continue growth, but disconnecting the resource usage from the growth. And the simplest example to start talking about circular economy is to take the example of the forest. So within a forest, there is no waste. Everything is being reused. When a leaf falls from a tree, the nutrient within the leaves will be still there on the foot of the tree and can be reused the following year. So bacteria are playing in the game, many microorganisms and so on. This is a full ecosystem where there is no waste. And this is a bit the aim or the target that we should all have in our ecosystem is let's design and work without waste, and even the word of waste should disappear in a way. That's maybe a goal that we cannot achieve, but we should try to be as close as we can from that goal. As other example and something which is food for thought, it's a list of life principles expressed by Hoagland and Hodgson, which are biologists. And out of those key elements or principles of life, and then we talk about life, it's about cells, it's about animals and so on. Some of them we can really take them out and we can see that it could be integrated into a circular economy approach. And I put them in red. Use few themes to generate multiple variations. Behind this, we can understand that there could be some modular designs. We can reuse out of some resources. We can make many things with those kind of resources. When we talk about life is organized thanks to information, it's also about sharing information between the different partners. And this is how also nature is being organized. Encourage diversity by redistributing information. Diversity is a key element. There are many, many ways of doing circular economy, and also doing it differently is also a resilient way of working. Then life works in cycle. I think I don't have to explain that more in details. Circular economy is a big cycle in a way. We don't need to see cycle as a line where the end restart, I would say go back to the start. We have to see this as a network. So the connections are really multiple. Life recycles everything, and that's what we should aim at doing circular economy or promoting circular economy. Life lasts thanks to the rotation of matters. Inside our body, every cell or every, let's say, element that we can find on Mendeleev tables is changing of position nearly every day. 70% is changing every day inside our body. This is a way also to say, let's reuse the resources. It's also important to optimize rather than maximize. Let's find the good balance between resources we use, the way we design our products, and also how can we balance waste versus reuse. Then cooperation is important. So we all believe nature is a big competition, but it's not true at all. The jungle rules is more cooperation than competition. And here behind circular economy, we talk more about cooperation. And then life is interconnected, interdependent. Circular economy is really about that. It's really working with partners and get connected with them. So talking about a definition, and I think it will be good if you are more interested in this subject to go to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation website, which is really talking a lot about circular economy. Circular economy aim is really to try to push and force a positive elements into the society and to disconnect the growth from the need of resources. So what are the three principles behind circular economy? We have to design out waste and pollution. We have to keep product and material in use. So it's not like we use products for one way and then it's over. No, we have to try to maintain them as much as we can. And on top of that, if we can regenerate natural system, it's really a caveat. Today, soil fertility is going down massively. We have 1% of organic matters into the soil. We should be at 4%. By doing proper circular economy, there are ways to restore biodiversity and soil fertility, for example. So that's really as a starting point about circular economy. This is only for reference. This is the main chart used also on Ellen MacArthur Foundation website. What I want you to see on this is that there are two sides of it. There is the left side, which is, let's say, the biologic circular economy in a way where everything is being recycled within nature. That's the ideal world where we are 100% sure that everything is being recycled. That's about the cradle-to-cradle approach. On the right side, we have more the industry that should try to optimize and better use the resources that they have taken out of nature. And for that, there are many ways you can maintain, make the usage of your products longer, you can reuse, you can maintain, you can recycle. So there are many ways, and those two cycles are close to each other. And if we can make the industrial cycle getting closer to the biologic one, it's even better by using maybe packaging that is biodegradable. That helps a lot into this system. Circular economy and SDGs. The main one that is behind circular economy is SDG number 12, responsible consumption, even though there are some benefits in other ones like number 6, clean water, number 7, renewable energy, 14, life below water. So there are many ones where circular economy is playing in the game, but the main one is the number 12. So circular economy is coming in, let's say, in contradiction with the classic model of linear economy. What is linear economy is you typically start by taking resources, you process it, you use it, and then it goes to waste. So there is no thinking and no preparation about what's next after the waste. And this is most of the time the current business. And that's not how it was working, I would say, centuries ago. So circular economy is not new. 2, 3, 4 centuries ago, everything was recycled. That's something that's more recent in the industry. So what type of waste do we have mostly? Typically, we have wasted resources. That's really stuff that we are throwing away. But then there are ways to improve that by trying to source everything, I would say, bio-based, which means that it can go back to nature later on, or also start working with renewable energy. But we have to be careful with renewable energy. There are two things. You have the energy in itself and the way you extract it from the environment. And sometimes the extraction is not so green at all. And that's something to take into account when you start working on circular economy. A second point is wasted capacity. People and companies have a lot of capacity, but most of the time it's not used as much. And that's where we see a new business model coming in place for improvement of this, using sharing, and that could be stuff like BlaBlaCar or even Uber and so on, where you start using the same resources or you share the resources. Then the third one is about wasted end-of-life value. So at the end of its life, a product has still value. We can do something with it. The worst one is to burn it to have energy. But if we can recycling it and even upcycling, the concept of upcycling is making something better than before. So you can improve the quality or create new products that have better value than the waste at the origin. And then we have what we call wasted life cycles. That's about time that products are not being used. And then to improve that, you can start to find a second life for the product by reselling, but by doing better maintenance, repair, or you can even remanufacture the system. Quick introduction to the Lansing ladder, and the concept behind, and that is really important, is to look at what is really important in recycling. And you can see on A and B, the top elements, that if you don't need something, don't use it. So the best recycling is about something that you haven't used. and the better is to reuse something before doing recycling. We jump too easily on level C, which is working on recycling. There is something we can do before that. Another concept, and that's taking quite some resource and some intelligence. It's about what we call circular economy design. The purpose of those approaches is really to start thinking about early on when you design your product for the circular economy. What I do mean with that is that when you think ahead, you can design to ensure that you don't mix too many materials, for example, that you can dismantle easily the product for reuse afterwards. So it might be some extra cost early on, but later on, when you talk about recycling elements, this will be a lot easier and even cheaper. So on the long run, there might be some financial impacts, positive ones. On the short run, we have to think deeper, not only about the features of the product, but also how can it be reused. A big ship company in the world called Maersk has even designed a big tanker where they put drawings to ensure that when this will be dismantled later on, 98% can be reused. So when the ship will be out of usage, maybe within 30, 40 years, and it will arrive into a dismantling unit, all the plans and all the drawings are there to make sure that everything can be reused. And some of the elements is also that they avoid mixing too many materials, because it's always difficult and energy consuming to separate different materials that are really combined together. And we can see that a lot in packaging that are difficult to recycle because we are mixing plastic together with paper and so on. If you would be more smart in the packaging design, we will try to make it out of only one material so it can be better processed afterwards. So when we talk about circular design, we talk about material selection. We have to think about products that will last, and we have to think later on about how to separate the materials to be reused in the circular economy. Another key element that we should not forget, so when we start working in circular economy for most of the companies, they have to think about reverse cycle. They have to find ways to get their product back or to maintain them, or even to get information about it to say, okay, right now I have to intervene on the product and do something. So companies might have to start to work on logistics, on sorting, warehousing, and I put a line on molecular biology and polymer chemistry. We have to find ways to separate the different components of the product that we produce. And that's something where we get closer to the nature, and I come back to the biomimicry at the start of the presentation. Something we have to keep in mind is that the nature is doing everything cold. What I do mean by cold is that they don't eat anything, and they find ways to recycle everything at, let's say, at the outdoor temperature. And that's something where there will be a lot of research needed to find better ways to recover resources using biology techniques. So reverse cycle, it's a key component that we have to take into account in most of the companies to make sure that we can separate, we can recover the product that have been shipped to the customer. New business model, and I will jump directly on the business model. In literature, you will find that there are 5 typical business models around circular economy. This is not something exclusive. There might be new ones, and there are also a mix of those business models. One of them is circular supply chain. That's typically the glass, for example, supply chain. You produce glass, you recover it, and you reuse it in your production, or it's the same for the steel. Recovery and recycling is really using waste and trying to find and do something better out of it. Worse is energy. Better is to make new products that are even better from a usage point of view. So people are doing with wasted tires and so on a piece of art, and then that's really about upcycling. Then we have collaborative consumption or sharing platforms. That's really something we see later, and where digital is playing a lot in the game. Performance or service system is really selling a product as a service. And when you sell it as a service, as a company, you have more interest to make sure that it's going to last long. And behind this, you have a lot of technologies, which is also digital as well, for Internet of Things and so on, to monitor your products and at the right time, do the right maintenance to make sure that everything is going okay. And then product life extension. Behind this, you can see reusing and also remanufacturing. That could be that you dismantle completely the product, you clean it, and you make it a new one out of the original product. So those 5 concepts in the examples of company doing circular economy, you will see that 2, sometimes 3 even, are being covered inside those companies. Something I want to say about platform economy that we have to be careful. There are 2 effects behind those platform economy, what I call the rebound effect and the backfire effect. The rebound effect is, if I take the example of BlaBlaCar, by doing sharing of a car to go from A to B, it may be that the person at the origin of the travel, because they know that, or she or he knows that other people will join and share the cost, that they will decide to go for travel, while originally they would not do it. And the others will decide that they will go for the travel because it's cheaper and they will do it. So at the end, it might be that we have more cars into the system than less cars. We have the same with Lime, where Lime, out of studies, shows that they are more taking out of people walking than really replacing cars. So there is something that might be positive on one side, but on the other side, there might be some negative impact. And then there is the backfire effect. If you do something where you save some money because you are sharing platforms and you are improving the usage of some assets, at the end, if you do some money savings, what's important to know is what do you do with that money you saved? If at the end you do something even worse, then there is no benefit for the society and the environment. So that's something to really keep in mind when we talk about platform economy and circular economy. There might be some cost saving behind that, but the point is to do what do we do with this cost saving? What are the main drivers and what do we see changing when we talk about circular economy? Typically, we move from ownership to access. We move from saying that we do something less bad to do something more good. And what I do mean behind that is that we are moving from negative externalities to positive. What can I do good for the environment? Then we move from waste to reuse. We move from product and production to service and sharing. We move from obsolescence to long life, and from resource consumption to regeneration. So it's really a mindset change that will trigger transformation of companies when they talk about circular economy. Now I will move to example of circular economy, and this example is to show that it's not new. If you look at RTT, which is the former Belgacom, 40 years ago, everybody had a phone home, and this phone was belonging to RTT, was not belonging to the people. So you were paying a monthly fee, a bit like the functionality economy. So all the assets were belonging to the central company, and they were managing maintenance and so on by themselves. And there were examples of people that have rented their phone device for 30 years. What happened afterwards with the DECT and the wireless technology? People start to buy their phones, and that's when we start creating a lot of waste. But the origin telecom was really wasteless in that sense. Another example that I know well because I'm active there, it's UZ2. It's a company based in Brussels. And what they do is they create a library of items and objects that typically you only use 1 or 2 a year. And so when you need it, using the app and the website, in 1 click, you can get that device delivered to a place close to your house, and you can use it for 2, 3, 4, 5 days. What are the benefits for the environment around that? There are several. The first one is that you are giving away to that company some assets that you don't use so often. So it's really recycling. Then this is being shared with others. That's really about the platform economy. And also what is being sold is the functionality. And then we talk about functionality economy. And behind the scene, people working there in the warehouse are people that are active for social integration. So overall, you can see in this example that we can work on many, many different business models. Another one, which is really at the origin of recycling, and this is a well-known example. It's Target, which is a group of companies out of which Deso is a brand, and they partner with a company called Aquafil. They sell, in a way, or they sell carpets as a service. So they provide carpets to companies. When they are used, they take it back and they recycle everything. So the top layer, which is made of nylon, is being recycled by Aquafil. So out of this, they recreate a new carpet nylon and they recycle something like between 90 and 95%. And the bottom layer is also being recycled by Tarkett to create new carpets. So overall, 90% of the carpet is being recycled, and they are also interested in making good quality because they sell it as a service to their end users. And this is those companies are really active in the Netherlands. So it's really functionality economy, and also they have a full recycling chain, and they have to partner between different companies to make sure that this is working. So this cannot work alone. It must work with a group of companies. Another example, and that's, I want to show here the importance of knowing your partners and your environment. A waste for one company could be an input for another one. And here the company Denso has a big waste of potassium aluminum fluoride. And by the way, close by, there were another company that was taking it as raw materials. And on one side is savings, but to do that, you need really to know your environment, start to knock at the doors, and try to find out if something great could happen with companies around you. Michelin is another well-known one. They moved from selling tires to sell kilometers of tires. And their buzzword is reduce, reuse, recycle, and renewables. It's kind of 4R, which is a motto that they are using. And what's important behind that is that by selling a price per kilometer, the truck drivers know what will be the real cost. But on the other side, Michelin will manage the maintenance. They will decide when they do repair, when they do replace, to maximize the lifetime of the tires. But on top of that, they provide extra services about fuel consumption, because tires of good quality allow to have lower consumption, and they can optimize all this. And this is becoming a product they sell to their customers. It's not only about tires, it's also about maintenance of the truck, and also lifetime of the truck, which is playing there, and the fuel consumption. Kalundborg is also something that is well known. It's in Denmark. And this is really even a full set of companies. It's really an industrial estate where by design, they define which resource every company needs, and the waste of each company is being reused in another company. And you have companies active in pharmaceuticals, in building materials, in chemicals and so on. And they organize themselves all together to make sure that there is limited waste and that the waste is becoming a new input for other companies. N-Pulp is another one, and here we talk about cradle to cradle. Is really using for packaging some residue of rice. And by doing that, they create packaging that is 100% recyclable, and you can use it in the field and anywhere outside as a fertilizer. So this is really about thinking about cradle to cradle design. And if you recall the chart of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we are really on the left side of the chart. Worn Again, it's another company that is defining process to reuse textile. And out of those textile, they can create new raw materials for textile or for other stuff. And they're really working on the chemicals to really make this happening. This one is a bit more recent. It's about Carlsberg, which has designed, in a way, a bottle which is made of paper. So fully recycled. And I don't know if it's yet on the market. I haven't seen it on the market, but that's something that's really coming and shows also the push and the interest of those big companies into recycling. Redisa is, let's say, a company in South Africa which had difficulties in the past. But their role is typically to collect all the tires and try to value them into other companies. So as tires in South Africa were split everywhere in the countryside, they organized a full logistic process to collect them and to value them. And these had really a big positive impact on the full environment in South Africa. Another example is Resigo, which is a subsidiary of La Poste en France, and they use their classic process to provide services to companies to recover all the paper out of the offices everywhere, and they provide it as a service. So it's really a kind of product expansion or service expansion beyond postal services, and I'm pretty sure they reuse a lot of their logistics to do that, and it's combined with the classic service of La Poste. ICO, it's also recycling of clothing inside shops, and they partner with major shops around the world, and either they reuse it really to remanufacture or reuse the clothing and resell it afterwards, or they reuse the fibers and so on to do some other usage for to protect houses from coldness and so on. Even Apple is playing in the game. They've designed a robot which can separate and sort all the components of cell phones. It's not for every cell phone, but for some of the cell phones, they do that, and they even call that robot Daisy. And it can disassemble more than 1 million devices per year. This is, I think, a good progress, because electronics is really a sector where a lot of rare materials are inside the phones, and recycling this will become key elements in the future. I talk about that example. It was Maersk. So Maersk was really active, and they spend a lot of time to really map completely a ship, and it's a huge ship. It's a big tanker, and they have all the plans and all the drawings to make sure that everything can be disassembled and recycled. And they play, and that's really something when I talk about the circular design, that's really about circular economy design. You think in advance what will happen to your product or asset afterwards. In Flanders, also where we have a lot of nutrients coming out of industry or even farms and so on, they've made a platform to try to valorize this, to make sure that it doesn't go in the river or into the waste. So talking about platforms to connect companies together is really an added value and an asset, because like I mentioned previously, circular economy doesn't happen alone. It's something that is happening together with other companies and so on. So to be able to do that, sometimes creating platforms is really an added value and an asset. Novelis, big manufacturer of cans and aluminium, is also at the same time recycling a lot of aluminium. So they've integrated into their process recycling and production. And I think it represents 40-60% of their business, so 40 recycling, 60% new products. So it's a big part of their business is also recycling. So they can really make an end-to-end approach, and they are really in a full recycle business model. Also in the retail, what I want to show, mentioning Walmart, is that there is a big trend around recycling, and in that sense, they are pushing all their suppliers, so the ones that are creating product using the Walmart brand, and they want every packaging being recyclable and reusable by 2025, but also they are pushing all their classic producer to also go into that game. So it means that they really understand that it's important for their customers, they want to push for it, and they want to also help their different suppliers to be active into the circular economy. Veolia is also playing in the same game. I will not spend too much time on this, but it's really about reusing waste of one company into another one. This one is quite funny. It's a company in Brazil. And this one, you don't buy any more washing machine, a dishwasher, or coffee machine. You rent them, and they've IoT device attached to those machines, so they know what's happening, and they can make any repair when needed and so on. So you really pay on a monthly basis for all those kind of devices. Ecovatif, this one is doing also packaging and protection. All this is made of mushrooms. So this is something that's really organic and can go back in the nature quite easily. Villa Welpelu in Netherlands. It's really houses made out of waste, but they decide on Google Earth where to position the house to get closer to the waste. So that's another dimension, and that's really something I mentioned earlier. You need to know your ecosystem and your environment to do a better circular economy. You need to get closer to the waste of the other one so it can become your input as a company. So what do we see as the different forces playing in the game? There are major enablers for circular economy. Digital is one of them. Logistics is another one, because there is a lot of sorting, recovery, and movement of materials. Biology and biomimicry, that's really the research zones that are really playing in the game to really be able to separate and reuse the different resources. Crisis also playing in the game because people start to understand better. Data also plays in the game, and there are a lot more funds and invest that are willing to help circular economy. There are still some barriers. Typically, we see some organization and cultures that have difficulties to make that kind of change. Some ecosystems are not always open. So if you are willing to do something and change, and around you, the other companies don't want to play the game, it's also difficult. Financing is still also an issue. Regulation doesn't move fast enough. So circular economy is quite dynamic, quite inventive, with a lot of creativity. Consumerism is also an issue because people want to buy more and cheaper, like low cost, and all the short-term mindset. When we talk about circular economy, it's really mid to long-term mindset. What are the main capabilities that we need to see in organization to be able and get geared to circular economy? There is a need really to start designing solution that brings customer benefit and also a benefit for the society by doing eco-design. We need to think about using recycled material as an input, as a sourcing. The reverse supply chain is another key element. So logistics, if you have some experience into that, it's really an added value. Selling performance and usage is always a good direction that is forcing the company to think about long life of product and product that will last. Organizing the cycle is also another important element, and I mentioned already IoT and digital. Managing ecosystem of stakeholders, and that's maybe something that is quite new. There is a need to have kind of steering committees, guidance committee, because many companies will have to work together to deliver benefits to the environment. And it's also about a culture. Companies need to live that approach, and it should even be in the purpose of the company. What are the favorable system conditions? Like I mentioned, collaboration and partnership is important. Another one I will take out of this slide is leading by example. You might be at the starting point, but other companies are already doing it, and there are a lot of examples already out there that can help you move into circular economy. So how to implement this in an easy way inside a company? Typically, it would start also with the purpose and the vision of your company. Where do you want to be? What are the positive stuff you want to share? Then you have strategy and plan. And I think it's important to go straight to delivery and mostly adapt. So it's a circular system to implement circular economy. Define a good purpose, well accepted in the company, strategic plan and the key directions, and then you deliver and you adapt. That's the best way to deploy circular economy in your organization. So as a summary, I want to emphasize on some key elements. So circular economy is really about optimizing and maximizing the time product, components, and material are kept in use. It's a fantastic tool to, if we still believe in growth, to decouple growth to the use of resources, because we are living in a finite world. So if we believe in growth, then we have to make sure that growth can continue, but with less resources. Circular economy is not something new. In the past, a lot of companies were doing circular economy without knowing it or without even mentioning it. So there is nothing new there. The business models can be applied on the whole chain, and I will not talk about chain anymore. It's really about a network. At every level of the company, something can happen at your supply side, logistics, transformation, production, even in the admin and the office, stuff could happen around circular economy. And to really do it far and make a big transformation, it's a considerable shift inside the company. Like I mentioned, you can do several levels of circular economy. You can do something, you can make small steps by recovering paper and so on. But if you want to do this till the end, you need to assess every impact. And when we impact also energy, and when you talk about renewable energy, it's always that energy being extracted plays in the game. You can always go far and further, but what's important is to be conscious about the reality and what can be done later on. And the final point I put in the box on the bottom is that circular economy cannot be achieved by one company alone. It's a system that needs to work in an ecosystem, and we need to have an holistic view. So talking to your competitors, they will become in a way your friends because there will be common interest. Talking to the companies around physically your location might be something to do together. So this kind of collaboration are really key elements behind that. So that was it for the presentation. I don't know if there are questions. So if you want to contact me, that's my email. And as Arthur was mentioning before, I'm also active in Farming for Climate, which is an association which is connecting companies to agroecology transition of farmers in Belgium to make it happen faster.
Thank you very much, Pascal. It was very insightful. So we do have questions. We have 4 questions. But before that, I just want to let Miguel, our partner, share a few words about this sustainability webinar, and then we will come back to the questions. So Miguel, if you hear me, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for attending the 3 webinars. Thank you, Pascal, for all the very concrete examples and business models that we can launch and we can create. Just to recap that Boreatus with partners such as Pascal, such as Olivier, we can help you from the ideation until the implementation. So don't hesitate to reach out for a sparring partner session or for more concrete plans. I see there are 4 questions. Don't hesitate to shoot more questions.
Yes. So we can start with the first question, Pascal. Anonymous attendee is asking which measures authorities could and should take to favor circular economy.
I think the main one is about labor taxation. Today, it's cheaper to buy a new bicycle than to repair one, only because manpower is expensive. So for this kind of jobs, this should become better financially to repair than reuse. And I think that's the major measure. So for every work being done that is playing in the game of limiting resources, there should be lower tax levels. Otherwise, nobody will repair anything. It's too costly from a time point of view. That's really, I would say, the main element.
Okay, thank you. Then it leads us a bit to the next one. Martin commented that it seems that doing good to environment is less attractive than doing things cheap because they're less expensive, faster. So I guess you get more economical return from it on the short term. And he asks, how do you see things changing so that it's more attractive to do good rather than doing cheap?
There are 2 answers behind that. One of them is, and that's maybe the Corona crisis that's happening now, it's opening the eyes of some consumer. And so on one side, the demand might change slightly. So companies might decide and want to change maybe their image, but also at the same time, they want to change their model to be more resilient. And resilience is the second answer. If you want a company to last long, they have to think about resilience and then not doing any more so cheap and short term, but maybe something that will last longer. This will come only if there is a trigger from the demand side, from the people. And I think that this crisis now will help. The companies that were doing good most of the time were companies where the CEO was making even a personal transition and decide to change the purpose of the company. But today, majority of companies prefer to do cheap because that's really how the business is working, I would say, till now. Evolution will start. There is in Belgium a group called Kaya, which is connecting 125 companies in circular economy. This is starting. And I think that the consciousness will grow time after time, and that the consumer will ask more to the companies doing production. And if we relocalize a lot more production, that will also play positively in the game.
Okay. Yasin also asks, what are your thoughts on why this sustainability-driven mindset is sometimes delayed in companies' agenda? So you mentioned that some CEOs make it a personal commitment, but it's true that in some company it's not yet a strategic priority.
It's culture. You need to change the full company, and the CEO should go beyond words. He should be able to do something more. Then you might have shareholders that might decide to go the other way around, and that's why adapting the purpose of the company is a key element. Why is a company there? Why? And that's a bit the why of Simon Sinek. Why are you there? Why is this company doing this? What are the benefits for the environment, for the society? That's really the key question that the company have to ask themselves. Mm-hmm. And then stuff can change in the company. Companies like Danone are pushing like hell, but it's difficult for them to move fast because it's really a huge organization. And at the end, everybody must believe that it's really the case and that really the top management wants the company to change. So it's a lot of communication and people awareness and believe that it's going to change. And then you get the whole company changing.
Okay. Another question from Martin. Do any label certification exist to assess companies' sustainability? I would turn the question here maybe to assess companies' circular economy or any cycle.
It's not really a specific certification, but there are overall 100 kind of labels that could be B Corp, could be, so it's hidden in those kind of the GRI. You have Carbon Disclosure Project. So behind all those certificates, we talk about circular economy. So there are many of them. I think it's 100 in the world. Some are necessary in some countries, some are not. But a lot of those companies, if you check even Proximus, they are following 3 or 4 of them. It's a lot of paperwork right now. It shows what the company are doing, but not what the real impact is in the company. I will take a simple example. If you are a huge company making billions and that you are investing into bees houses, you can put that in that report, but as a big company, you should be able to do more. And the impact is more the ratio between size and capabilities versus what is going to happen.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's very insightful. Then the last question, I don't know if you have more, don't hesitate to type. We have a few minutes. Attila mentions, out of the circular initiative examples you showed, how many are profitable as standalone business?
I would say, I don't know the answer for this, but we should not see that anymore as a standalone business. We should see the full ecosystem. If in the ecosystem, one company is taking the full value, there will be no way to solve this. So the value should be shared, I would say, properly between the different actors. And that will be the solution out of this. There are some, let's say, caveat where there is really benefits and that by luck, the waste of someone is becoming the input of another one and they're both making savings. So they will live of it. But if you want to make it massive, then the value should be shared among the different ecosystem members.
And do you know any system, like what would be the system in place to be able to share this value? You know?
It's today it will be done contractually and on the willingness and it's useless to be the champion in a world of where all companies are dead. So at the end, it's important for a company that their suppliers are living well, that their customers are living well. So that's more resilient. And here we come in another subject, which is the resilience of the company. And resilience, you can see 3 ways. One way is simply you want to be robust. So you say, okay, there will be a crisis and I will still be there afterwards. I will have only to suffer a little bit, but then I will be there. Then you have the companies that also will adapt but they will stay on the same path. They will continue to do the same thing. They will do it differently. And then you have companies that will transform, and those one will change the path. And those one will become really resilient because they can adapt fully their business model and even their product. And that's all about circular economy and being profitable. We have to look at it on the mid to long term, because short term, I would say the classic companies will always win. But when you have a disaster or crisis, and there will be more and more coming, that's where resilience come in the game. And when you look at the profitability over 5 to 10 years, then the story might be different.
Mm-hmm. That's a topic that is very actual, actually. Mm. So, well, I think we don't have any more questions. Thank you very much, Pascal, for this insightful question and answer session. Don't forget, guys, to scan the QR code to send us feedback, or you will receive a mail with the link to the form, but it's very valuable for us. Don't hesitate to reach out to Pascal, to Brightwolf, to Olivier if you have more questions. We are all available. And this is the end of our series, so I hope you enjoyed, and see you soon. Thank you very much.